So today we have on the podcast Jason Mcdaniel. Jason is a world traveler. As right now, if you can see on his background, he is in Poland. Um, I wish I had Jason's life because just the nomad traveler of where you go bouncing back and forth from everywhere. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I do not complain a whole lot these days. I promise you that.
um, so I wanted to talk about that a little bit with the travel
Yeah.
because, what has enabled you to be able to do, live this kind of lifestyle where you are traveling for one, and you really don't need a home base right now, but you do have one. So,
Yeah, right. Well, that's a great question. That's what everybody's asking me constantly, especially here recently as I travel around and meet new people. That's the $1 million question. So
right.
the short answer is rental income from owning rental properties. That's really the summary of it. Um, I don't know how much further you want me to elaborate on that, but
As much as you want.
you definitely don't have that much time because I will go on for hours and hours. As you know, I love nothing more than talking about real estate investing and owning rental properties, and I preach it to almost every single person I come in contact with, like from Uber drivers to my barber to friends and family and everybody. But I'll give you the brief version as best as I can. Basically, I started out by I learned how to find a deal. I learned how to find off-market properties because I started out with no money. I had a few $1,000s, so not quite no money, but a few $1,000s and a motorcycle and a friend that lent me $20,000 for my very first flip. And basically, I started buying off-market properties. And when someone would sell it to me, seller finance with a very, very low down payment, we're talking like three, four, $5,000 down payment on a typically 20, 25, 30-year loan. When somebody said okay to that proposition, then I would take that down myself and buy it myself. And usually I didn't even have three, four, $5,000 in my bank account. I just said, well, if I get it under contract within 30 days, I can figure out how to come up with those few $1,000s. And if not, if they said I absolutely won't do seller financing, I have to have cash, then I would bring in a partner, a money partner, to use their cash and buy it as a fix and flip. And I would do everything. I'd get the deal, I'd manage the construction, manage the rehab, get the realtor to sell it, and then we would split everything 50-50 on the tail end. And I lived very frugally, and I took all the flip profits and I put them into these little down payments and the fixer upper seller finance properties I was buying, as well as I was doing wholesaling. So I was wholesaling a lot, and that was all me. I wasn't 50-50 with anybody. I was just putting out bandit signs and doing direct mail. So I had two sources of big checks, the wholesaling, the flipping, and all of that money went into building a rental portfolio that was 100% purchased with seller financing. And fast forward 6 years later, here I am traveling the world, and I have an assistant back in Knoxville, Tennessee. That's where my portfolio is. She handles 95% of everything. I talk to her a little bit on the phone, answer questions when she has them, maybe talk to a contractor or two throughout the week, but generally I'm working like I'm on phone calls an hour or two per week right now. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's kind of a fantasy, but
that's
it's my
wonderful.
reality. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And what would you say to someone that maybe is trying to get their first seller finance deal and doesn't have whatever down payment, the owner, wants to give? What was your critical thinking, I guess, in the first few deals when you're like, I don't have the money for this, but I'll figure out how to get the
Yeah.
money. Where did you go, or what would you advise someone to do that is just starting out?
Yeah. So I'm talking to new people that are starting out, all the time. every week. I'm on the phone, I'm on Zoom calls, probably 10 or 15 hours a week, just coaching people, mentoring people. And so I'm getting this exact question constantly, as you would expect. Basically, what my advice always is well, okay, it depends on their exact circumstances, but if they're exactly how I started out, which is what you asked, starting out with basically no money, maybe a few $1,000s, then I would recommend doing what I did, which is learn how to find the deal because the information's out there. I've got 100% of my education on the internet for free. It was podcasts and YouTube, almost 100% of the not in-person education that I got was on Bigger Pockets Real Estate podcast. Brandon Turner and Josh Dorkin were the ones doing it back then when I first started. And that's where I learned everything. I mean, that's literally where I learned how to find a deal, how to, find off market properties, how to discuss seller financing. But what I tell people is do what I did and, use the little money you have. Even if you have $1,000, you can put $1,000 into direct mail or software. Now there's apps, there's stuff out there I don't even know because I stopped doing marketing almost 3 years ago. Well, 3 years ago exactly this month. So I haven't really done any of that, but I do know some friends and people that I help learn, and they're telling me about these apps that do this lead stacking and all this crazy stuff where you can get lists cheaper than ever. You can text message, you can look up. I mean, the technology is out there and it's by far cheaper than ever to skip trace and do all this stuff. So all you need to know is how to find the deals, which is easy to learn, and then put in the work to find the deals, which isn't like if you look at the hourly, it's not that much. You won't need to put in. I always tell somebody, I guarantee you, if you do exactly what I say, which what I recommend, one of many methods is driving for dollars. That's what I love. That's what, when I was back in Knoxville, I would take people out driving for dollars, give them a crash course on that, on how I think, how I look at properties. And I knew how to skip trace and phone call people. And you can do the same thing and, drive for dollars and make a list, and you can send people stuff in the mail and say, hey, I'd like to buy your house at 123 Main Street. And you can automate this stuff. You can literally get started with about $1,000 and almost for sure get your first deal. And I always tell people, if you put in 40 hours doing what I tell you to do in those 40 hours and start out with driving for dollars, and there's even much more efficient ways to do it now than driving for dollars. You can basically virtually drive for dollars or just pull lists or pay for lists and cold call or text message. It's very, very unlikely, in my opinion, if you put in 40 hours and $1,000 into whatever, you're going to get your first deal, even starting with no education, at least like with me helping you or somebody that's similar to me, that's done it before. Get somebody that can guide you through it, mentor you. You'll get a deal. And when I say a deal, in my market in Knoxville, Tennessee, the average deal I've purchased was like $50,000 to $150,000. And whether you're going to wholesale that, keep it as a rental if they'll do seller finance, or flip it, the minimum you're going to make, let's say on a wholesale, what my opinion of a deal is like $10,000 or $15,000 wholesale fee. So 40 hours, $1,000 invested, you make 10 or 15,000 with no experience, not much education.
Yeah.
There's nothing better out there, but it's hard work. It really is, and it's not fun, so that's the barrier to entry, and that's why not many people do it, and people that get started, they don't stick with it because it's not like they call it work for a reason. If it wasn't work, they'd call it fun, right? Well, that's not what they call it. So yeah.
That's funny. I think it also is market dependent. Where and how, because maybe Knoxville is really good market to do that in, where you can get deals that quickly. But then there are other people where maybe they're in different markets and they've spent, a lot more money than $1,000 or a lot more hours than 40 and still haven't been able to
Mhm.
find a deal or, get that success that they see on, different social media or whatever it is. So,
Yeah.
what would you say to someone like that maybe says, well, Jason, I did put in the work and I have learned, but for whatever reason, it's not working out for me.
Yeah, right. Well, that I would say that issue it sounds like it would be a mentor issue to me. I mean, if you have a good mentor who's literally walking you through that whole process, I think it's very, very likely that this recipe would end up in the your first deal. It's possible in some tighter markets that are much more competitive. You might have to spend $2,000-3,000 in marketing. You might have to put in 80 hours, but I can't imagine if you put in 80 hours of focus time and let's say $3,000, $4,000 maybe in the hottest of markets. Let's say you're in Austin or Miami or something like that, even there, I can't imagine that it wouldn't result in getting your first deal, especially if you're going after the low hanging fruit, like I'm saying. Like it's me personally, what I've done quite a bit of is driving for dollars, which is really
Right.
it can you can go around a lot of the competition because a lot of the competition won't even see those deals on their list because they haven't those deals that are deferred maintenance and overgrown lots, they haven't made it to a list yet. You're seeing it in real time. You're seeing things like that happen in real time where maybe somebody hasn't filed eviction yet on this tenant and you see the mess that they've caused this house to get in, but it's going to take another few months or few years before the landlord even realizes their house is such a mess because they're out of state or whatever. But yeah, if you put in 20, 30 hours driving for dollars, 20, 30 hours cold calling all those leads or texting all those leads and mailing out mailers to all the leads that you drove for dollars for. And again, you have a mentor. So this is ultra important. This is maybe the most important part. You can't just go out and do it willy-nilly. You really do need to have somebody to bounce every step off of, if not somebody like me where I would go out with people when I was in Knoxville. I had a Sequoia with 3 rows. So I would take 4 or 5, 6 people with me, go driving around and just tell them exactly how I thought and what I was looking for and the whole process. Um, so
What
yeah,
makes you do that? Because I mean, I personally saw it when I was in Knoxville. Like, if you go and you take Jason for lunch, he's gonna bring a crew because he's always with people. Like that's just you're always surrounded by people. But that's the beautiful thing that you have because most people, once you have achieved a certain level of success, they don't want to help people that are starting out, right? And so what intrigues you so much about helping people that are beginning in this journey?
yeah, I guess it's really just the most satisfying thing that I've ever done is teaching people how to do things that I have experience with, such as this, and I do this with other things as well. But teaching is the ultimate success, really. If you can be a good teacher, that's like the pinnacle. I mean, there's nothing that's more satisfying. So it's like when you say when you've had the success, and when I think about success, it's not just financial. That's usually how people talk about it. Well, how successful is he? But I want, spiritual success. I
Yeah.
want contentment. I want peace of mind. I want fulfillment in my life. I want to be able to sleep well at night. I want to be able to feel like a good human, And the best way that I've found to do that is to serve others without expectations. And the thing about this is kind of a paradox is it's easy for me to sit here and say this, but was I totally committed to just spending as much energy and time helping people for free? Because I've never charged anybody for coaching or anything like that. 3, 4, or 5 years ago, I wasn't doing that as much because I was really just obsessed with, selfishly, to be honest, building my cash flow to where I could have my properties working for me and my money working for me, as Robert Kiyosaki says. That's one of the ways that I got motivated initially. He talks about poor people work for money, rich people, their money works for them. So I was really putting every nickel to work to build this life where in my mind I was thinking, well, I'm going to travel the world and I'm going to, eat amazing meals and do all this crazy stuff and maybe buy a Lambo or whatever. And that was my fantasy in my head. And I always really liked helping people along the way, but I couldn't really go all in on that until now. And even now, to be honest, I'm not just serving people 24/7. I don't want to make it sound like a Mother Teresa. It's nothing like that. But I do really make an effort every day to go out of my way to help people. And for example, answer the phone maybe if I don't feel like answering it when somebody's calling and I know they've got questions about something, or reply to messages on Facebook when people are messaging me. And it's really the most satisfying thing that I've ever done. But again, it's one of the many benefits of achieving financial freedom is being able to serve more. And that's
Right.
really a part of my why and has been since the very beginning, because I knew I have all my goals and my vision, all that written down, and I look at it daily. And part of that is to do a lot of charity and service and help other people. So even in the beginning, when I was really just working for cash flow and being selfish, I knew once I had financial freedom, once I had enough income to sustain my life and pay my bills, I knew I would have the freedom to help more people and spend more time doing that stuff that really satisfies me, because money never really satisfied me. Money just makes life a lot easier and it solves a whole bunch of problems. But money will not make you happy. I guarantee that. That's not what it does. But it will help you to be happier by if you being of service to others. But what you're talking about is a lot of people, they don't really help more people. They just want more money or whatever. They just
Right.
want to do their own thing, and they're probably not very happy people, I would assume.
Hmm. Do you think what gives you the most happiest? The service of others? I know you say that fulfills you a lot, based off what you were saying, but also I assume, right, you had this picture of your life, which you now have. Achieving that compared to maybe other things that you do, like helping other people, what have you found to give you the most happiness, I guess I would say?
Yeah. You mean in regards to helping people, like what type of helping people, or do you mean
Also,
being?
like your own self, because this is a question I ask myself, and most people think about.
Mhm.
I need to achieve financial freedom for myself, like what you were saying, right? Before I can really help other people. Is that's the thought. Um, my thinking is on your way to achieving financial freedom, do you think that you were saying, right? I did help a little bit, but I mean, I couldn't help as much as I am doing now because I'm able to do it, have more time because my finances have been taken care of. Do you think
Yeah.
there's a better way to do it?
Well, honestly, I was always okay. So even in the beginning, uh, I was always helping other people as much as possible, if with nothing else, my personal experience. I was just in a room a few days ago with Brandon Turner, who is my freaking hero. And I was at this mastermind in Maui, Hawaii, and he was saying, if you have done one deal, if you have actually closed one deal, there is a million people out there that think you are just incredible. Like they can't even dream of getting to where you are with your level of success and doing one real estate deal. They will like analyze it and they will learn and they'll do all this education. They might even spend a bunch of money on education, and they still don't have the courage to do that one deal, or they don't know exactly what to do or how to do it. So even if you've done one deal, there's a whole lot of people out there that you can help with your experience. And so I try to always say that to people, and Brandon has said that for years and years, and he's basically my mentor. He's mentored me virtually by obsessively listening to the podcast that he put out. And so I've kind of had that in my mentality since the very beginning, because he's who I learned from. And I always knew, if nothing else, I can go out there and I can really preach this stuff. And that's what
Right.
I've done. I mean, since the very, very beginning, since I did my first deal, I've really tried hard to encourage other people and inspire other people to get started investing, and especially with real estate investing, because most people assume you need to have millions of dollars to get started. It's the cliche thing that I say all the time. It's like, people assume if you're a real estate investor, you were born with a ton of money, you probably inherited everything, you never worked a day in your life, you're just this rich guy who just started out with money and this easy life, right? So my story is the exact opposite. When I started out, I had a few $1,000s and a motorcycle that I sold to go towards my first deal. I had no W-2 job for probably 6 years before I started. And so I couldn't go to a bank and get a bank loan. I didn't have any credibility, nothing. And so I really try to inspire people, and I have since early on. But now, just the cushion I have from being financially free with pretty much entirely passive income has allowed me to spend a lot more effort and energy on seeking these people and teaching what I know and inspiring. That's the best feeling in the world, is when I feel like I'm inspiring somebody, or 10 times better than that, when somebody tells me, hey, you really helped me to get started. Hey, thank you for inspiring me to do my first deal. I really didn't have the courage, but you helped me to overcome the fear, because it is a really scary thing, to buy a house, an investment property. It feels scary to most people anyways.
Right.
Did that answer your question at all?
It does. It gives some framework of the fact that most people, if you've done your first deal, you think you need to be doing millions of deals before you can really help somebody else. But you've reframed it in the fact that millions of people haven't even done their first deal. So you can always be just a little bit ahead of another person and be able to extend your hand and lift them back up with where at least you are at, at your certain level. So I think it did. And another thing I wanted to ask you has to do with, now you've been doing this for 6 years, right?
Well, technically, I bought my first deal exactly 7 years ago. I was halfway through my master's, and I took a semester off, and I was reflecting and trying to figure out. I decided I wanted to be a real estate investor, and then I was convinced to finish my master's for the sake of finishing, if nothing else. And in that time, I did have $10,000 saved up from flipping cars. So I was flipping cars on Craigslist. So I literally had 10,000 cash, and I found my first deal, which was a turnkey rental property. And so I put 10,000 down. It was seller finance. I think it was $90,000 or $80,000. And that was just pretty much it wasn't a great deal by any stretch. It was just a fair deal, but it was seller finance, so I could buy it. I didn't have to have a bank. I didn't have to have $1 million or even $80,000. I just needed. Actually, the guy told me he would let me pay $3,500 down, and I said, "Well, I want to have a smaller monthly payment, be more conservative with my investment." So I said, "If I give you 10,000 down, will you do 6% interest on the loan instead of 7%?" He said, "Yes." Anyways, from there, I just focused on finishing my master's degree. I put tenants in there. The guy that sold it to me kind of mentored me and showed me how to do the lease, and he helped me advertise all that. So for the next year, I didn't really do anything besides listen to Bigger Pockets, and finish up my engineering degree. And then as soon as I finished that, I went full speed ahead on bandit signs and direct mail to get leads. And March 6 years ago is when I started full time getting leads, doing flips, and buying more rental properties. So yeah, technically I started 7 years ago this month.
Well, engineering to real estate investing.
Yeah.
What 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 sparked this to go? Because you said I made the decision right while I was doing my master's. So what sparked that interest into real estate? Because it's totally different.
Right. So it is 100% different. So I had some friends who I graduated with doing my bachelor's degree in civil engineering, and most of them all went to work for TDOT, and just to get the 5 to 10 years experience they needed to be at the next level, get their PE and start being the boss, have a firm or whatever. And they were all at a computer all day. They had a boss, and I'm not a very good employee at all. I have like severe issues with authority, even if I've had bosses that were super cool and I really respected them, but still I had this feeling like it was just gross for me to have somebody over me telling me what to do, even if they were cool. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm just not a very employable person, I think. So, and I knew that about myself. And also, I'm really hyperactive. I like to move around a lot. I like to be around people. And I thought doing civil engineering, you're going to be outdoors, out and about doing stuff. And occasionally you got to be in front of a computer. Well, my friends were telling me how it was. And they're like, yeah, I'm in the office 95% of the time. And, you know, they clock in, they clock out basically. And it was just, and I was just working for myself, selling cars in my free time, buying and selling on Craigslist. And I just realized as I was selling cars, this is amazing. This is freedom. I don't have a boss, and it's the coolest thing ever, because before that I had probably 30, 35 jobs. And
You're
I
unemployable.
hated every single one
Yeah.
of them. This was the first job where I didn't have a boss, and I absolutely loved it. So it just clicked, and I knew I was good at it. I was always like a hustler. I was always could sell stuff real easily, and I love people. I love talking to people. I love, just helping people to figure out what they want and help them with what they want and that sort of thing. So I think I was kind of a natural salesman, and super hyperactive. So I just realized this isn't going to work for me. And I had already been in college for like 8 years at that point. So it was kind of bittersweet, but I knew I had a friend who did a flip or two each year all by himself. He did like 90% of the work by himself. He would find the deals by himself. And then I had another friend who was a realtor, and he had a couple rentals. And so I started hanging out with them some at this point and saying, hey, how do you do this? And so I just realized, yeah, I can do this. It's very simple, straightforward, and not easy at all, but way easier for me than having a boss.
Yeah,
You know?
makes sense. So I think you realized what you didn't want, and then what
Yeah.
you liked about your job that really wasn't a job, because you made it, just a way to make money with flipping cars.
Yeah, exactly.
I also think that your decision was influenced by the people that you were hanging out with, because you mentioned the realtor. So how have certain relationships that you've cultivated within the last, 6 or 7 years, how have they been able to catapult you into, whatever? It could be financially, with real estate, it could be, spiritually, it could be in any kind of way. What relationships would you say are key for people to make, and how did you find those relationships?
Yeah, that's a big question. Well, I've always done, again, what Brandon Turner was just talking about when he was a keynote speaker at this mastermind I went to, which what a mastermind, part of what it is networking. It's basically like a meetup, but it's
Right.
intensive and it's for like 4 or 5 days. So he was talking about strategic networking, and I always kind of did that naturally. For example, when I started marketing early on, I remember my friend Nate Snyder, shout out to Nate, he's the man. He called me from a letter I sent him about a property, and he was an absentee owner, but he was a flipper. And he called me, he said, "Hey man, I don't think you want to buy this house. I'm rehabbing it. I'm a professional fix and flipper, but you're a wholesaler. I'm interested in learning about wholesaling. And if you're at all interested in rehabbing or learning anything I can help you with, maybe we can, have a win-win relationship. Let's get lunch." And I was like, "Heck yeah, absolutely. I would love to meet you at one of your flips and talk to you about," because I didn't know anything about construction whatsoever, nothing about how to flip a house. It's amazing I even survived my first year, honestly. But the reason is I had people that I wasn't scared to ask for help. And one, like I mentioned, was my friend Jeremy, that he was the guy I said when I very, very first started hanging out with him. He was doing 1 or 2 flips a year by himself, all the work himself. And my other friend Adam was a realtor. And so before I would buy a deal my first year, I started getting leads coming in, but then somebody would say, "Yeah, I'll sell my house for X." I would hit up Jeremy, or after I made friends with Nate Snyder, who had done thousands of flips. He had just moved to Knoxville from Vegas, where he was flipping for this huge company, and literally just more experience than I ever dreamed of, just fell in my lap. And he was like, "Hey man, I'm at your service. Teach me about this marketing stuff you're doing. I'd like to get my own deals instead of using realtors, and I'll help you." So every house I almost bought or was about to get under contract, I would give Nate a shout, and he would come over, walk the property with me, analyze it with me, and tell me, "Yeah, this is a deal," or "No, it's not a deal," or "This is how you estimate the repair. This is how you figure out how much this roof will cost, or this foundation work will cost," or whatever. And I just continued meeting those people. I went to meetups, and I would meet them through, like I said, the marketing, or just talking with everybody about it constantly. And I would purposefully make those relationships and nurture those relationships, sometimes for multiple years, without getting anything back. I would just always be helping people, like, to find deals. Or Nate, the first couple of years that I was friends with Nate, I sold him or I gave him a couple wholesale deals for free, for no charge. And I sold him probably 5 or 6 wholesales, and I charged him $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 wholesale fee on them. I mean, I would just hook him up basically, because I knew the value he would provide me in the future over years was going to be worth tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I'm like, I know this is just long-term thinking. That's all it comes down to. This is relationships are long-term. I'm not trying to be in short-term relationships with anybody. So thinking long-term is, over years, if you really help people as much as possible, and you try to do it without expectation, which is kind of difficult, but if you do that, and half the people that you help, they'll never do anything for you, but the other half of the people you help, they'll do triple back for you. And so it's a net gain, because half the people do triple, then it doesn't matter that the other half never even did you another favor, never called you up and said, "Hey man, how can I repay you?" It doesn't even matter. It's not even a thought in my head. And the best way to do that is to try to go into it without expectations, but in the back of your mind, this is going to pay off 10x probably over my lifetime. So that's kind of how I think of things.
What got you, so basically cultivating relationships that you've done has been a lot of it thinking long term of how is this relationship in the long term possibly going to provide value, and I'll exchange for value right now. For people that are younger, a lot of times I feel like they will value the money over the relationship every time, because they're not thinking long term. So to people like that, I guess you would say, just based off Jason's experience, how you can see my dispo heart, like when I used to disposition, it hurts me when you said that you gave him wholesale deals for free. But then when
Yeah.
you started explaining the fact that, you were thinking long term as far as the relationship, and you probably did a lot of deals with him, I would assume, after the fact. Then
Mhm.
that makes sense to me, because I do believe that relationships are more important than
Yeah.
money. But um, what are some things that you would say, like looking back within the last 6 years, that you would say you wish you wouldn't have done them, or you wish you learned a really valuable lesson from, it could be anything that you've done within the last 6 years that you would advise other people maybe not to do, or to do a different way?
Well, one thing that I'm constantly advising people of is, and this is the biggest, a lot of people that come to me are interested in learning how to wholesale because that's
Mm-hmm.
the popular thing. And you can do it with no money or close to no money. Well, you can do it with no money. And so that's a common way for people to get their foot in the door. And it's also how I got started. It's part of the way that I got started. So the reason wholesalers have such a horrible name and horrible reputation in general is the main reason, in my opinion, one of many reasons, but the biggest, worst reason that wholesalers have a bad name is because a majority of wholesalers, I would say, tie up properties thinking this is just a, get rich quick, easy money type of thing to do. And they don't consider the fact that this old lady that's selling her house is counting on this money to come in 30 days. And you go and you sign a contract and you tell her this money will be there in 30 days. You're going to buy this property cash. You're not completely honest. You don't say, well, I'm going to market this and I'm going to try to find a buyer for it. You say, I'm going to buy your house cash, which is being dishonest, is what it's doing. And then you tie it up thinking, oh, this is easy money. And then you estimated the repairs incorrectly.
Right.
Turns out you tell everybody in your market about it. Turns out it's not a deal. The lady said she'd sell it for 100,000, and the investors you're showing it to, they say they'll give you 90 for it, which is 10,000 less than you got it under contract for. So you would make a net negative $10,000. And so you go back to her and you say, hey, I can't buy this for 100,000. She said, well, I need 100,000. I can't lower the price and I don't know what to do. I'm counting on this money. I'm planning to move to this other place and I've already got it lined up, or I need this money for some type of emergency, whatever. You don't want to screw people over, you know? And that's how wholesalers screw people over the worst. They do it a lot of different ways with other stuff, but this is the worst way, in my opinion. And one time, my first year, I kind of did this. I got something under contract and I was totally honest with the family I got it under contract with. And I said, I've got somebody who's an investor who's going to buy it. And I actually connected him with her. And I said, he's going to meet you at closing. I'm working with him, but he's going to be the person that closes it. I gave them each other's phone numbers. And this guy ended up asking them if he could go to the house before closing with his contractors and make a scope of work and go ahead and I think he said he was going to go ahead and pull up the carpet, if I remember correctly. So, and he went there with me before this happened and he walked the property and everything. And he said, yeah, we're good to go, whatever, whatever. And it was like, I forget, $30,000 house or something. It was pretty rough. But this lady moved out of the house. She had been living there. She moved on out. She moved in with some other family and she was older and her family was all there. When I got it under contract initially, her family was all there together and everything. I met them and made friends with them and they were really sweet, country people. And then he ended up basically gutting the whole house. He took off all the paneling from all the walls. He pulled up all the carpet and he realized that it was completely ate up with termite damage. I mean, the whole house, all the framing, the girder beam, the joists, it was, I mean, it's a total loss. Like
Oh,
it was an
wow.
unfixable house. It was that bad. And I didn't even know what I was doing. It's not an excuse, but I didn't look at anything. I didn't crawl under it. I just got it under contract, right? So he calls me and says, "Hey, man, I think he gave me a deposit on his wholesale fee. I think he was going to give me like $5,000, and he paid me $1,000 to do the assignment of the contract. Then at closing, he's going to give me the remaining." And I said, "All right, I'll just cancel the contract. I'll give you your money back." So I met him and I gave him his $1,000 back or whatever it was. And I called her and I said, "Hey, I'm not going to be able to perform on this contract. I'm so sorry." And she said, "Okay, well then." Her family contacted me and said, "Hey, that's not okay. You signed a contract with us. You're going to have to buy this house, or your buddy's going to have to buy it, or y'all are going to have to figure something out because this isn't cool." Then I got a letter from their lawyer saying, "We're suing you for not performing on the contract, and we're suing the other guy also." So they talked to a lawyer. The lawyer said, "Well, I'm not sure exactly how this will play out in court because I don't know all about this assignment of contract stuff. So we should just sue them both." And that's what they did. They sued us both for $10,000. We went to court and we both lost. The other guy, he didn't show up, so he lost by default. I argued my case and I lost. The judge said, "I understand you've got this assignment and that's legal, but you signed a contract also. And so this is kind of your fault also." So yeah, I mean, ultimately after court, the family came up to me and they were crying. They were like, "We're so sorry. We didn't want this to happen to you, but the lawyer said we needed to sue you also, blah, blah, blah." I ended up, my lawyer recommended I offer to their lawyer after the fact, after court was done and everything, if they would take a settlement of $1,000, and they said yes. So I ended up giving them $1,000, which is awesome. But it's not very cool to get sued and lose because ultimately I was in the wrong. I screwed up. I didn't have a deal, and I got it under contract anyways, and that was 100% my fault. So that's the biggest advice I ever tell people is don't lock something up if it's not for sure, without a doubt, a deal.
And
And
so,
one way to
yeah.
know is to get somebody like me or somebody else, like I was getting Nate to meet me out at these houses. Well, this particular house, Nate didn't meet. I don't even know if I had met Nate at that point. This was one of my very first deals. But I didn't get anybody to go look at that house with me. I just did it by myself. But after that, probably every single house ever after that, I got somebody way more experienced than me to go walk it with me. And that's how I knew for sure I had a deal.
Because you had at least one buyer there with you while you were walking it.
A buyer or a friend just looking at it with me, a second set of eyes, and ideally somebody who had much more experience than me, maybe just there as a favor. More often than not, yeah, they were just there as a favor for me because, again, I had done them 10 favors, and then I hit them up and said, "Hey, can you come like spend 5 minutes looking at this house with me?" And they're like, "Yeah, of course, dude. I'll do anything you want, whatever." So yeah.
1 to 10 favors. That's good. That's nice.
Hey, if you're starting out and you're not a millionaire to begin with, this is just kind of what you should do,
Yeah. And so how did you provide value to them, other people that were more experienced than you, but you wanted them to be in your ecosystem, right? What
Yeah.
what other ways would you think while you're speaking to them, okay, well, I can find them a deal, or I can teach them about marketing because that's what I'm doing. What were there other things that you would try to do to provide value or figure out what it is that they needed, I assume?
Yeah. Just, I mean, to figure out what they need is be an active listener. Really listen and think about what they're going through, what their situation is, ask them the right questions. And also something I've done and continue to do as much as possible, and this is kind of an easy way, especially if you're social like me, but you can force yourself to be social even if you're not, is be a connector, connect them with somebody. A lot of times, for example, there was a lady who I had contacted about she had 6 houses in my market in Lenore City, one of my favorite markets. And she said she would sell everything to me, sell her finance. Eventually, we talked about everything. She said, I'm not ready. My husband's going to retire. We're waiting on that. And then we'll sell you all of them, or at least a few of them, is what she said. So I said, do you mind if I follow up with you in a month or two? She said, yeah, it might be a few months and it might be a year or two, but sure, call me back. I love talking to you, blah, blah, blah. Because I just talk and, talk and talk and talk. So, so I called her back every 1 to 2 months. And within the first year, she needed an electrician at one of her properties. Her personal house, she needed a roofer to do some roof repairs. And she called me because she knew I had contacts with contractors. So I would send my guys out there. I'd say, hey, take care of this lady, do a really good job, give her the price you would give me, because she's a really important person to me. And they would go and they'd take care of her and they'd show up, and they knew I would, have their head on a stake if they didn't. So they would do it. And it's just as simple as that. 2.5 years later, last September, she calls me finally. I'd been following up, and I had connected her, and I'd helped her out, done her some favors. And I knew in the back of my mind, she might never sell me anything, and who cares? I'm helping her out, and it makes me feel good. I'm doing a good deed, but maybe it will help encourage her, motivate her to keep me at the front of the line when she does decide to sell. And sure enough, she called me last September and said, hey, I've got 2 of these houses that are kind of a headache, and we think we're going to go ahead and sell them. And I said, okay, how's no money down sound? And she said, yeah, sounds good. Let's do it.
Wow.
So she sold me 2 houses, nothing down, 25-year note, 5% in. And that's how I got it. I just connected her with some other people that were useful to her. And that's what my meetup does, right? That's what any meetup does. And you can start a meetup with no money. You can start connecting people with no money. You can be helpful and of service just by introducing people to other people that will be useful to them.
That's a great tip, because a lot of times when people are starting out, they feel like, well, what could I possibly do, if I don't have money? Everybody brings it down to money, but this just being a connector is a great point. And all you really need to do to be a connector is talk to different types of people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Just talk to people and connect them depending on what their needs are. So I think that was a great tip. Another thing I wanted to ask has to do with what you were talking about, the legal lawsuit, and what came to my mind was somebody that you were just starting out when that happened too, right?
Yeah.
What kept you going after getting because most people, I would think, they're starting out, they're doing deals, and they think, okay, this is amazing. I'm making, 10 grand here, 10 grand there. Great. And then you get sued and you're like, wait a second, maybe I should rethink this. But you were like, yeah, let's settle 1,000, it was like, you just kept going. What kept you going after being sued on a wholesale transaction when you didn't know what you're doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's, I could talk about the drama, the bad, the disaster. It's so messy what I've done and what I've been doing for the last 6 years. There's just all sorts of chaos the whole time, honestly. So I just don't really give up, and I don't recommend anybody else give up ever, no matter what you're doing. I mean, you're going to fall down, you're going to get kicked while you're down, and you got to get back up and keep going. It's the only way to get anywhere. It really is. I know that's a very cliche, generic answer, but I committed to it after I said, okay, I kind of burned the boats in my mind anyways. I had this degree that I spent so many years of my life getting, working towards. And I said, I'm going to just throw this in the trash and I'm going to do this other thing and I'm going all in, and I don't really have a backup plan. I don't really have anything I can fall back on. I could have maybe fallen back on my engineering degree, but I knew it wasn't an option. I knew it was. I knew going back to flipping cars on Craigslist wasn't, I mean, my last year flipping common thing with, you have to have a whole ton of cash and basically to go buy cars really, really fast. For years, I walked around on UT campus as a student with $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 in my pocket, literally cash. And eventually I paid the price for it, which is I had a gun pulled on me and all my money taken. So I knew I didn't want to go back to selling cars. I knew I didn't want to be an engineer. I couldn't. There's no way. I couldn't go back to having a boss. So there wasn't really a plan B, but also I just don't really give up. You just can't. You're
I
gonna
just,
fail, right?
so, Jason, but that's something special because a lot of people, I mean, you say things so like nonchalant, like, I had a gun pulled on me. What? I got sued. Okay. Here. And then most of the things, and I'm sure there's a lot more, but a lot of the things that you have been through in life could bury someone's spirit and their will to continue going. Right. And so there are people that I'm sure it doesn't have to just be business or real estate. There could be people in different areas of life where they feel buried, where like
Mhm.
everything is against them. And so what I'm trying to uncover is, what was your thinking when all that stuff was there? Is like, I'm just not going to give up. Because a lot of people will give up
Yeah.
when everything goes against them. So trying to pull that out of you, so like someone could say maybe to themselves what you used to say to yourself, right, when you were dealing with all those types of issues.
Yeah. The it's a mentality more than anything. I wish I had an easier answer than that, but it's just being able to commit to your vision and your path and what you decide. It's being able to say, okay, there are no big deals in life, right? It's ultimately it's just money. It's just whatever happens, it's just some drama, some emotional stuff that you're going through. At the end of the day, if nobody dies or nobody gets seriously injured, there are no big deals. The big deals, 99% of them are up here. They're created from our minds. That's the big deals. So they're really just imaginary, and that's how you have to look at it. And this is my favorite quote of one of my favorite quotes of all time, at least, is you only fail if you don't try. And really, to add to that, you only fail if you give up. So if you try and you keep trying, because you're going to try and you're going to not get the result you anticipated, but you have to keep trying. Maybe try slightly a different angle, but you can't stop trying. And fortunately for me, real estate investing is one of those things where it's so simple. It's so common sense. It's just it's so basic. All the principles of it are, it's a very forgiving thing to get into. Owning rental properties, it's a very forgiving way to put your money to work. You can make a whole lot of mistakes, and as long as you buy right and you screen for tenants well, you're going to be fine. If you do those two things, that's it. If you at least buy decent deals and you put in good people into your properties, you can screw up everything else. I promise, because I've done it. I promise. You can screw up so much if you just do those two things, and you lean really, really hard on people that are smarter than you and more experienced than you. That's really the main stuff that I've done is I've leaned on my mentors and my friends and my network, and I've made sure I was buying deals, and I've made sure that the tenants going into my properties were good people. And I didn't even do that perfectly. I didn't even lean on my mentors when I got this house under contract, like I told you. And I put some crappy tenants in a couple of my properties a couple of times. And it cost me a few $1,000s. And I weathered those storms. I didn't give up then either. It's just like ultimately no matter what happens, you just have to keep moving forward. And if you're a buy and hold real estate investor, it's so hard to screw up long term if you just do that. You just keep moving forward.
Love it.
So,
I love
yeah.
that. That's a nice little motivational way to anyone that's maybe going through it. And then I wanted to ask before we finish, basically, if there are people that want to connect with you, want to give value to you in return for the value that you give out so graciously, what would be the best way to connect with you? Whether I know you have the meetup in Knoxville.
Yeah.
It's called Knoxville Best Real Estate Meetup, right?
Yeah, Knoxville's best real estate investor meetup. It's a
There you go.
mouthful. Yeah, but it's on. We have a Facebook group for it on Facebook. Anybody can join Knoxville's best real estate investor meetup. It's the second Tuesday evening of every month at 6 p.m. at the Hilton Garden Inn off Peregrine Way, and I would love for anybody to come and support that. And also look me up on Facebook, Jason McDaniel. I'm in that group, so you can find me through that group, or on Instagram, I'm jason.m.mcdaniel. And just hit me up, and I love answering questions. And even though I'm on vacation, as people put it, I'm just traveling the world kind of indefinitely. I always tell people that I'm helping regularly, do not feel like you're going to burden me. I love opportunities to help and to serve and to answer questions and to watch people grow. I mean, there's no amount of money that could pay for that. That's just something so I tell people, do not rob me of an opportunity to answer your questions and to serve you and to give back. So seriously, if anybody's out there interested in getting started or whatever, just have questions about whatever. I love to talk, I love to help people, and I love to serve. So hit me up on Facebook or Instagram, and I'll be happy to help.
I love that. You have such a servant heart. I love it so much. So sweet of you. And just to finish it off on that, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Jason has been such a just a pleasure to meet and to have a relationship with. I don't know a lot of people that I know a lot of people that serve, but the way that you do it is just so it's just so genuine and wholehearted. And there's not a lot of people like you, Jason. So I wish you nothing but the best in Poland or, Mexico or Hawaii, wherever you wherever you land. And I and Daniel are always here to help you no matter what you want.
Thank you so much. It's really been an honor. I appreciate it.